As teachers, we want to be certain to give students time for reflection so they can consider their learning, think about what they said and heard. And by doing that, they develop their own personal understandings, and then they connect to the global world because they've got those students around them with different ideas, different perceptions, and B, they've got their own changes in their thoughts, how their thoughts can be affected by everybody around them. So how we have that voice in our reflective thought, how we have the time to think about what happened to us and to others is such a significant part of any adolescent learning. Let's look and see now that idea of voice in this clip and how that voice offers us such rich perspectives to think about in looking at how young people learn.
I've learned that if something looks bad, not to just like stand around and be a bystander, but actually go and do something about it.
Now, even in this classroom, there's people of different race, and we can all stay together and be friends and everything like that.
After reading this story, this made me think that sometimes in my life, I think I was either not using my voice at all, or sometimes I let other people go overshadow my voice. Actually, right now around the world, there's so many wars and still there's murder, stealing, genocide.
It's fortunate that it doesn't happen like it used to. I mean, like back then, everything was so brutal.
No, but this is Canada. We're living in Canada. It's different in other parts of the world.
Genocide happens wherever there's really distress, and we're lucky that it's a different time, and so there's so many problems, so many other places that we really need to make an effort as our country to make a difference.
We are the people that are going to be older, and we're going to be in charge of our world, right? So we're going to have to step up, and we're going to have to do something about this.
Europe was it was a very civilized place for the time. How could that even happen? How is that possible?
What we just talked about, it relates to the book because even in the book, they lived in a civilized place where they talked together, they lived together. And in the Holocaust, the same thing happened with everyone. It was a civilized thing. But then one day, the terrible things just came and overruled everything, overpowered everything.
That one little rabbit, if it warns just enough people, then it can change the future, right?
Sadly, Little Rabbit left the clearing. He'd go to tell other forest creatures about the terrible things. He hoped someone would listen.
If the little rabbit, he says, I hope someone will listen, it's just the curiosity if anyone will believe him, because in his little forest clearing, no one, listened to him. They didn't bother because they think, they're not going to come back. Maybe that last line means that maybe this whole thing won't repeat itself, history won't repeat itself.
Just imagine you have the same book. You see all the porcupines, the birds, and the rabbits, and all of them, and then this little rabbit comes and he starts warning them all. What do you think would be different than what would happen if there wouldn't be a change in the course of the voices?
From the last line, if he tells the other ones, then they might not believe him because they didn't go through that experience that he went through.
Her whole idea of this book was an attempt to do sort of what the little rabbit did of of going to some other place and warning about the terrible things, sort of, in a way. It was her contribution to this passing on of knowledge.
Okay, so we've just read The Terrible Things together as a class, and a lot of you came up with these messages within the book, but I would like us to now think about how that can relate to your own lives, times where maybe you felt you could have had a voice, or times where you can have a different set of actions based on what you've learned in the book.
Something is, you don't have to be like Gandhi, you don't have to be some super preacher stop the war, stop the genocide. You have to know how to use your voice in everyday life. Really apply it. You don't have to be an adult. You don't have to be the big rabbit to make a difference. You can be the little rabbit and still have a powerful voice.
It was like Martin Luther King, how he was little, but he always wanted to make whites and blacks go together. So he always had that big voice, and he always didn't have a missing voice by always showing that he really wanted this, and he got lots of people to work with him, and now people can work together.
Even if you are afraid, then know that you're not alone because you're not the only person who's afraid.
Most people like don't realize you gain experience by making mistakes. So you use your voice like every chance you get, and like you're gonna learn a lot more, and you'll like have more fulfilled your life instead of just being silenced. And no one can like take your voice. Only you can silence your voice.
But if like no one asks any questions, then you won't ever find out the answer, which means that like you won't ever have like the full understanding of something. And if you're afraid to ask a question, then like someone else might have the same question and they might be afraid too. So like you should speak up instead of just holding your voice back in.
Oh, it's good to ask questions because it could also show that you're a leader and that people might want to follow you because you're really good, because you're confident to ask questions and stuff.
A lot of times, like when you're teaching, like one of the greatest things sometimes about teaching is that like you live for you to learn something from the student and for it to go both ways, because that's like where it all is supposed to go, like the sharing of knowledge. And like it helps so much when you use your voice in those kind of situations. Everyone's like, I don't know how you, like everyone connects more.
I think that from just one little picture book, so many people could have so many different opinions about the book. It just can all flow into one big conversation about stuff, and that can lead to different conversations that are still a bit connecting to it, but just leads to different things. So one small thing could lead to something very big.
This picture book sprouts an idea, and as like simplistic as it may be, it's our like choice to like make it into something more. And like because we learned about like the Holocaust, that's why it came up to us even before we saw the allegory. Like there's so many different things where this happens, and like you can make it into a different story because it's one idea. It's not a story yet until you read it and you think about it.
Maybe there are picture books because the author has his or her point of view on it, but maybe the author wants the readers to have a different perspective on it. So like we get to know more about it and see what we think the images and the words, what they symbolize. Just because like we talked a lot about the fear and some kind of like bullying that we talked about in class, maybe that will make us, whenever we see bullying kind of happen and we know that we are the bystanders, to actually take some action. So and to learn from like just a simple storybook.
This business about voice is pretty significant for young people whose voices are changing. That's interesting. We can learn to make our voice heard in better ways. How about that, June?
Using your voice, it may sound easy, but when you actually want to do it in real life, it can be kind of hard. So you, like, for example, jobs like working with customers and taking phone calls, you kind of have to train for that because you have to know how to say the right things, like not to get the customer mad and like leave the business forever, but also to get your message across.
So that practice helps in classroom then.
Something else that like I thought this video helps us like that I noticed is that it realizes like now that you know this, when should you use your voice and how would it change like everyday life? Because it relates to all of us in any simple situation, like for example bullying. You need to know that you should do something and use your voice. Don't be the character in the story that is voiceless.
So somehow that power and that voice are connected, aren't they? And we gain power for ourselves through our voice and making it heard. We know the impact of social media in our world today is huge. What about in your classroom?
Well, we had this small writing assignment that we did where we wrote a recount about our missing voices that we had in our past, and we presented them on a site called Glogster. And what that is that you get to post anything that you want on there. It's somewhat of a social media site, and what we did is we posted them on there for people to see. And a thought that came to mind was that if a lot of people have similar life moments, and something about voices is pretty common. So what I thought was, if someone that was having a voice problem, like someone maybe being bullied, could go onto that site and see that, oh, gee, this person was just like me, and maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I could use my voice, and it could change everything. So it's just somewhat of a guideline to prove that there are people that do have missing voices, but you're not alone.
And do you think social media is giving us voice?
Yes, I think so, because when you're talking to a person face to face, then you're only giving your voice and like stating your opinion to that person. But on the internet, it's connected to the whole wide world. So someone in other countries can read your recount or like your piece of writing. So it's not only that your personal problems happen in your area, it happens all over the world. So many people can connect to it and relate to it, and it might even change how they're facing their problems.
And can social media be part of a classroom, do you think?
Yeah, because also what you said, like you can connect and sort of, it's a tool that like young people like sort of know how to use well and properly to give their opinions. Like some people in our class are very quiet, like when they have to talk to someone, but when it comes to using the computer, they can talk as much as they want, like nonstop, and they can really give their ideas and opinions. They're not afraid to.
I noticed in the clip that you were sitting in groups talking quite informally, I thought, and listening and reflecting. And you seemed to have time to rethink, think newly, soften your ideas and express your ideas. Is that unusual in the classroom?
Every time we do something, for example, independent work, our teacher always gives us time to reflect and share as a group, because school's not just about giving you homework and you read it at school, you come back and the teacher checks it. It's not always about that. In school, you want to learn, and a really good way to learn is by communicating with each other.
Something that's really good is when you've unloaded all your ideas and you don't like feel a regret that you should have said something more, like when you leave the class or something. Because when you get to take in a reflection, it's perfect, like what you're thinking. You don't have to worry about if it sounds perfect, but you're going to give the idea and bring it across so everyone else can hear it.